Hey y'all, thanks for stopping by. So, I guess keeping with the trend of videos I've been making this week, we're going to be talking about guns again, but we're going to be talking about gun laws and the way people talk about the laws they want passed regarding firearms. Now, I don't know if you can tell by my sort of everything, but I I work with firearms for a living. Servicing them, processing sales, things like that. So I know a lot about how they function. And I think that's my issue when it comes to people talking about wanting new laws regarding firearms. A lot of what's said just doesn't make sense or would be incredibly hard to implement. And I'll explain that. So, I think the big one that people talk about with firearm restrictions is magazine sizes. Most people, when they talk about magazines and wanting to put restrictions on them, they'll say, we don't want high capacity magazines. We shouldn't sell high capacity magazines. What does that mean to you? What is a high capacity magazine? Because if you say that's a 30 round magazine, that's frankly, that's a lie. For AR style firearms for the AK platform, the factory original magazines for those are 30 rounds. That's not high capacity. That's just normal for that platform of firearm. Now, if you want to talk about handguns, things like that, yeah, most of them don't come with a 30 round magazine. Depending on the caliber, depending on the model of firearm, I mean, I would argue one of the most recognizable firearms, the 1911, that one only has an 8 round magazine standard. So yeah, 30 round magazine for that would definitely be high capacity. But most of the time when people are talking about magazine restrictions, they only are bringing up ARs. And that's usually what people talk about when they talk about restricting firearms. That's the other part of it too. When people talk about restricting firearms, the one thing that people will say is, we need to ban assault rifles. These kind of rifles don't need to be sold for public use. What does that mean to you? That's the problem with a statement like that, because if you look at what an assault rifle is defined by the ATF, most of the people you're talking to who own firearms in the United States, they've never shot an assault rifle. None of them have the capability of select fire. Most people that you talk to only have semi-automatic rifles. Yeah, it's an AR. Yeah, it looks that way, but at the end of the day, you can't call something like that an assault rifle. If you're going by definitions and what the ATF categorizes as an assault rifle, one of the major points of that is it has to have a selective fire rate. You have to be able to shoot 1 round, burst fire, full auto, something like that. And most of the people who you talk to about guns, they've probably never held a gun that has different selections and fire rates. Maybe if they go to ranges, maybe if they got a little bit of extra scratch and they can get a tax stamp from the ATF to build something like that. But for most of us, we've never shot anything that goes full auto or burst fire. So saying you want to get rid of assault rifles doesn't affect most of the people you're talking to. But that's not what you mean when you say that. You're not talking about guns that can shoot full auto, at least from what I've gathered. Most of the people who I hear when they say we should ban assault rifles, they just mean AR platforms. But even then, what exactly do you mean by that? Are you talking about the cycling rate of the device? Are you talking about a direct impingement system? Are you talking about, you know, something chambered in a certain caliber? I'm not someone who, the moment someone talks about they want to put restrictions on firearms, I don't write people off for that. The only thing that I would ask when it comes to talking about firearm restrictions, new laws, anything like that, just make sure what you're saying makes sense. I'm fine with firearm regulation. I'm not someone who, saw that Second Amendment as like any sort of restriction is an affront to my rights. I can understand putting laws in place, but that's the point, though. When you're making these laws, when you're trying to make these changes, you need to be very specific about what you mean and what you're trying to accomplish. Because if you want to say you don't want assault rifles sold to the general public, they're already not. And the ones that are, you got to go through a lot of background checks to get something like that done. Like you're in federal systems after that. A tax stamp is not something you hide from. So, yeah, honestly, it's cool if you want to talk about firearm regulations. Just make your point accurately. Normally, people won't have an issue with that. The people who do, they're probably not legislators. So it doesn't really matter what they think. There's nothing that makes these firearms inherently different. If you take a Mini 14 from Ruger, it's got wood furniture, it's got, little magazine. It still shoots 5.56. It can still shoot the exact same ammunition that an AR-15 would shoot. So the difference is how they look. If that's your issue, then you don't need to say that we need to ban assault rifles. What you're talking about is furniture. You're talking about rail systems, you're talking about grips, you're talking about stocks, things like that. And if that's really what you're trying to ban, doesn't make too much sense to me, because, like I was saying, that doesn't affect what you're shooting. It might affect your comfort, but at the end of the day, those guns shoot the same bullet. They just look a little different. Some people would say that a Mini 14 is completely fine for people to own, but not an AR-15 chambered in 5.56. Frankly, it doesn't make any sense to me, but it doesn't make sense on a legal level. It doesn't make sense on a definitional level. So the whole point of this video, if you want to talk about laws, if you want to change laws, be accurate with what you say. That's the most important part. Y'all have a good day.